Okay, so picture this. It's April 28th, 2026,
Right.
and the Atlanta Braves are sitting in first place with a 5-game lead in the NL East. They haven't lost a single series all year.
Which is just insane to think about.
Right. I mean, they boast the absolute best ERA in all of baseball. So if you're just, glancing at the standings, it looks like this perfectly predictable, dominant start from a heavily favored roster.
Oh, absolutely. But the thing is, it isn't predictable at all. Like, if you look under the hood, the engine driving this team is completely upside down.
Exactly. And welcome to the deep dive, everyone, because today we're opening up a massive stack of sports analysis, advanced scouting notes, and deep cut franchise history covering these early 2026 Braves.
Yeah, we've got a lot to get through.
We really do. And our mission for you today is to unpack this bizarre paradox. How does a team so thoroughly outperform expectations while its biggest stars are, honestly, essentially misfiring?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Plus, we're getting into how historical infield debates are haunting the franchise and what it actually means to look past the surface numbers in, well, really any field you're in.
Because, I mean, surface numbers can be incredibly deceptive, right? Especially in a sport that generates as much daily data as baseball does.
For sure. So, look, we have a ton of ground to cover. We're definitely going to talk about the Philadelphia Phillies and their just ridiculous 10-game collapse.
Oh, we have to talk about that.
We have to. But I think we need to start with the biggest mystery of this 2026 season so far. How exactly does a team dominate when its MVP candidate looks totally lost at the plate?
Right.
And meanwhile, a 25-year-old hitting near the bottom of the order is suddenly carrying the entire load.
Yeah, it's really the defining dynamic of their season right now, the whole Michael Harris II versus Ronald Acuna Jr.'s paradox.
Let's start with Acuna, because, I think anyone listening to this can relate to this feeling. Imagine you're, doing everything perfectly on a massive project at work, right?
Oh, I know this feeling.
Right. You hit every milestone, your methodology is flawless,
Yeah.
but literally right before the deadline, some random software glitch just deletes your final presentation.
The worst. Just the absolute worst.
It's devastating. You did everything right, but your surface result is a 0. And that honestly feels like what the analytics are saying about Acuna right now.
It really does.
But I got to push back on these sources a bit. Is it really just terrible luck? Or are we ignoring the physical reality of a guy whose sprint speed has dropped to, 26.5 feet per second?
Yeah, 26.5. And that is the exact tension we need to explore here. Because if you just look at a traditional box score, his numbers are, well, they're deeply concerning.
Oh, totally.
Right. I mean, through 29 games, he's hitting 239 with a 714 OPS.
Which is not Acuna numbers.
Not at all. But, your project analogy highlights the underlying data, the actual biomechanical process of his swing. It tells a vastly different story. The metric we really have to look at here is expected slugging percentage, or, XSLG.
Okay, wait. Before we throw that number out there, explain the mechanics of expected slugging for the listener. Why should we trust that over what actually happens on the field?
Sure, yeah. So because it isolates the batter's true skill from just the random chaos of the game, expected slugging looks strictly at the quality of contact.
Okay.
So we're talking about the exit velocity of the ball off the bat and the launch angle, and then it calculates what the result should be based on years of historical data.
So it ignores the defense entirely.
Exactly. It strips away external factors, a sudden gust of wind, shifting defenses, or, a brilliant catch. It doesn't care about any of that.
Right.
So Acuna's expected slugging right now is 499, but his actual slugging is only 358.
Wow. That is a massive chasm.
It's huge. It's a massive gap between the quality of his process and the reality of his outcome.
So the data basically says he is squaring the ball up perfectly.
Yeah.
But he's just hitting it directly into the defense over and over.
Precisely. I mean, the notes show he has hit 28 batted balls at 100 miles per hour or faster.
28?
Yeah. And in Major League Baseball, the historical average hit rate on balls hit that hard is 57%.
Okay.
But Acuna's hit rate on those exact same lasers, 43%.
Jeez.
He is just getting robbed repeatedly. I mean, the most glaring example was in late April against the Phillies.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, he launches a ball at nearly 108 miles per hour. The launch angle is perfect. Mathematically, it is a home run in almost every scenario.
Right.
But Brandon Marsh perfectly times this leap at the wall and makes a ridiculous robbery catch. So a guaranteed 3-run homer instantly turns into a long, loud out.
Literally a glitch deleting the project at the deadline.
Ex-
But, okay, here's where I struggle to just wave a magic wand and say, oh, he'll be fine, it's just luck. We can't ignore the sprint's speed numbers in these scouting notes.
No, we definitely can't.
Like we said, he's down to 26.5 feet per second.
Yes. And just for context, that puts him in the 36th percentile in the league.
The 36th percentile. Listen, we are talking about Ronald Acuna Jr. here, a guy who stole 73 bases just 3 years ago.
I know, it's crazy.
This is the guy whose entire aura was built on being the most terrifying, dynamic athlete on the diamond.
And that is where, the physical toll of those 2 ACL surgeries becomes undeniable.
Right.
But the drop in sprint speed doesn't just mean fewer stolen bases. It fundamentally alters how defenses play him and how he has to approach his at-bats.
Because they don't have to respect the speed as much.
Exactly. When you have elite speed, infielders have to play closer to the grass. You beat out routine grounders for base hits, which, pads your batting average. You stretch long singles into doubles.
Yeah.
But when that speed vanishes, you lose all those marginal gritty hits. Suddenly, the only way to get extra bases is to hit the ball over the outfielders' heads.
Which puts immense psychological pressure on a hitter.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you have to swing harder and basically alter your natural mechanics to compensate.
100%, which perfectly frames the other half of this paradox.
Yes, because while Acuna is trying to figure out how to operate his new post-surgery physical profile, Michael Harris II is just carrying the entire load.
Money Mike.
And he's doing it from the bottom half of the order, which is structurally fascinating.
It really is.
Like, through 20 games, Harris is hitting .290 with an .816 OPS. But unlike Acuna, Harris's underlying metrics in his surface results are, like, shaking hands perfectly.
They're completely aligned.
Right. The sources point heavily to his WOBA, his weighted on-base average. But let's break that down for the listener really quick, because it's not just another baseball acronym.
Right.
How does WBA actually give us a clearer picture than just standard on-base percentage?
So, standard on-base percentage treats every time you reach base exactly the same. A walk is equal to a single, which is equal to a home run.
Right.
But intuitively, we know that isn't true. A walk might move a runner up one base, but a double can score a guy all the way from first.
Exactly.
So WOBA assigns a specific, historically weighted run value to how a player reaches base. It basically measures their actual threat level to generate runs.
Okay.
And Harris is carrying a 399 WOBA right now, which is elite.
And he's combining that with a 55.8% hard hit rate.
Right, meaning more than half the time he makes contact, he is squaring it up with authority. He isn't just surviving on bloop singles, finding holes in the shift.
No.
He is generating high-value contact consistently,
Yeah.
and that is a highly sustainable, repeatable process.
And that process is culminating in these incredibly clutch moments that completely define a team's early season.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I'm looking at the notes from the recent Phillies series.
Mhm.
He goes 3 for 3 with a solo homer, which was his second 3-hit game in 3 days.
Unbelievable stretch.
But the defining moment isn't even a game he started.
Oh, you mean the late scratch game with the quad injury?
Yes, exactly. So he gets scratched from the starting lineup an hour before first pitch with a strained left quad.
Right.
He's sitting on the bench, wrapped up, essentially shut down for the night. But it's a tight divisional game. And in the 6th inning, the manager needs a pinch hitter in a high-leverage spot.
So what does he do?
He looks down the bench and calls on a guy with a bad leg. Harris comes up totally cold, with no pregame batting practice reps, and just slaps a fastball right over the center fielder's glove for a go-ahead 2-run single.
It's amazing. The Braves win that game 5-3 purely because a player trusted his swing mechanics enough to deliver while physically compromised.
Yeah.
And the historical context here is wild. Only 6 leadoff hitters in franchise history have had as many hits over a 5-game span as Harris did during this stretch.
Wow.
He's joining names like Ralph Garr and Kenny Lofton.
Listen, being mentioned in the same breath as Kenny Lofton is rarefied air.
It really is.
And I think it presents a really compelling question for you listening right now. Like, how often do we judge a situation, whether it's in business and personal goals or team management, solely by the surface outcome?
Oh, all the time.
Right. We see Acuna's .239 average, and immediately demanded change in strategy, while totally ignoring the elite 4.99 expected slugging process.
Yeah.
Conversely, we see a guy hitting lower in the order, like Harris, and just assume he's a role player, completely missing the elite threat level he's actually generating.
It's the ultimate trap of outcome bias. You have to be willing to look at the mechanics driving the result, not just the result itself.
Yeah, exactly.
And the irony here is that while the Braves are surviving by trusting their underlying metrics and, letting the luck balance out, their biggest rival is experiencing a complete systemic collapse.
Oh, man. We have to talk about the Philadelphia Phillies.
We really do.
Because the Braves' resilience seamlessly highlights just how fragile the rest of the division is right now.
It's a stark contrast.
It really is. Atlanta is dominating the National League East, with their ace pitcher and their starting catcher sitting on the injured list. Meanwhile, the Phillies, a roster built and paid to be a World Series juggernaut, are in absolute freefall.
The contrast in organizational stability is staggering.
It's wild. I look at a streak like this and I have to ask, in sports, we love the cliche of next man up.
Sure.
We love to talk about resilience. But at what point do you look at a team losing 10 games in a row, a feat they haven't managed since 1999, by the way, and recognize that it isn't just a slump, but a fundamental breakdown in their approach?
Well, the data strongly suggests a breakdown. I mean,
Yeah.
They have dropped 6 consecutive series.
Brutal.
They are 0-4 against the Braves this year. But it's not just that they are losing, it's how they're losing.
Right. The vibes are terrible.
Exactly. When a top-heavy team built around massive power starts to struggle, the natural psychological reaction is to press. Hitters start expanding their strike zones, trying to hit a 5-run home run with nobody on base to immediately fix the deficit. The whole process just completely evaporates.
And you saw the absolute floor of that process against Chris Sale recently.
Oh, that was rough.
A 6-0 shutout
Yeah.
where the Phillies managed exactly 2 hits. It was a masterclass in exploiting a panicked lineup.
Sale just dismantled them.
He did. He dismantled them while he just swung out of their shoes. They are watching Atlanta build a 5-game division lead, and honestly, here is why the rest of the league should be terrified.
Oh, here it comes.
The Braves are posting the best ERA in baseball without their best pitcher.
Yeah, this is where the depth of their system becomes deeply intimidating. Spencer Strider, their true ace, has been sidelined with an oblique strain.
Right.
But let's look at his recent rehab start in AAA Gwinnett, because the underlying metrics of that start are far more important than the box score.
Okay, so we went 5 innings, struck out 7, gave up 2 runs. But what's the mechanic that actually matters there?
The pitch count and the velocity.
Okay, he threw 82 pitches. When you are returning from an oblique strain, which is a core injury that affects the entire rotational torque of a pitcher's delivery, the biggest question is stamina.
Like, does the core hold up when fatigue sets in?
Exactly. And in the later innings of that start, Strider was sitting 95 to 96 miles per hour, and he touched 96.9 miles per hour on his 82nd pitch.
Touching nearly 97 on pitch 82.
Yeah.
That is the biological green light. The torque is back, the core is completely stable, and the manager is already hinting he could be activated for the upcoming series.
And add to that Sean Murphy, their premium run-producing catcher, who is recovering from off-season hip surgery.
Right. How's he looking?
Well, in his latest rehab game, he had 3 hits, a double, and 2 RBI. His return is also imminent.
So just to crystallize the macro implication for everyone listening, the first-place team, who hasn't lost a series all year, is about to drop a Cy Young caliber arm and an elite starting catcher back into their everyday lineup. It's a wealth of riches, and it stems from a roster capable of adapting when their primary tools fail them,
Yeah.
which conceptually brings us right back to the infield. Because while Ronald Acuna Jr. is struggling to adapt to his new physical reality, another cornerstone player has figured out exactly how to contribute when his primary weapon goes cold.
Austin Riley.
Exact.
Talk about a bizarre turnaround. Riley had one of the worst starts imaginable. Like through his first 8 games, he was hitting 103.
Really struggling.
He was completely lost against breaking balls, which has historically been a vulnerability for him when he's slumping anyway.
Right.
But over his last 8 games, he hits 303, 3 doubles, 7 RBI, and a massive solo home run off a first-pitch fastball.
But, the home run isn't even the most fascinating part of that turnaround.
Not at all. The detail in these sources that absolutely floored me is what he did while the power wasn't there.
Yeah.
In the middle of this slump, Austin Riley steals 2 bases. His career high for an entire season is 3.
That is the definition of adaptability.
Exactly.
When your swing mechanics are slightly off and you can't hit the slider, you have to find alternative ways to apply pressure to the defense.
Right.
The Braves recently brought in Antoine Richardson as their base running coordinator.
Oh, the same coach who helped Juan Soto steal 38 bases in a single season.
That's the one. Richardson is clearly getting into Riley's head, teaching him to read pitchers' pickoff moves and jump counts.
So he recognized his main tool was failing, and he just pulled out a completely different one.
Yeah.
And that concept of adapting your profile, well, it opens the door to a much larger philosophical conversation. It brings us to what the scouting notes refer to as the franchise's forever debate at first base.
Matt Olson versus Freddie Freeman.
The big one.
It is the defining argument for this modern era of Braves baseball, and it perfectly encapsulates two wildly different approaches to roster building.
You know, I used to look at this debate and think of it as comparing a loud muscle car to a quiet, reliable Swiss watch.
Okay, I can see that.
But digging into the underlying mechanics of how these two actually play the game, I don't think that analogy works anymore.
No.
No, it's really more like comparing a high-risk, high-reward venture capital fund to compounding interest.
Oh, that is a brilliant way to frame it.
Right.
Because the data through their respective age 31 seasons maps perfectly to that analogy. Let's look at Olson first, the venture capital firm.
Right. With Olson, you are swinging for massive, earth-shaking payouts. Like through age 31, he has 288 career home runs.
Huge numbers.
His peak is historic. Just look at his 2023 season. 54 home runs and 139 RBI, both leading Major League Baseball and setting franchise records. He brings immense raw power to the plate.
And you have to factor in his durability, too. Olson has played all 162 games in 4 separate seasons.
Which is so rare now.
Right. In an era dominated by load management and sports science, a guy who physically answers the bell every single day is a massive foundational asset. Add in 3 Gold Glove awards, and his value is undeniable.
It is. But here is where I struggle with the Olson profile, especially when we talk about winning in October.
The volatility.
Exactly. Yes, 54 home runs is an incredible payout, but venture capital funds are volatile. When raw power goes cold against elite postseason pitching, it goes completely dark.
Yeah.
So does Freddie Freeman's contact-heavy profile actually make him a more dangerous, slump-proof threat when the games matter most?
Analytically, yes.
Yes.
Because Freeman's value is compounding interest.
Okay, unpack that.
If Olson has the edge in raw power, 288 homers to Freeman's 220 at that age, Freeman counters with an overwhelming ability to control the entire strike zone.
Right.
Through age 31, Freeman had a career batting average of 295 compared to Olson's 257. But it's how he gets those hits that matters.
The mechanics.
Exactly. Freeman has a unique swing path that allows him to keep the barrel of the bat in the hitting zone longer than almost anyone in baseball.
So he has more margin for error.
Precisely. He can take an elite 98-mile-per-hour fastball on the inside corner and casually drive it to the opposite field.
Which neutralizes elite velocity. You just can't overpower him.
No, you can't. He isn't relying on perfectly timing a massive, high-effort swing.
Yeah.
He's relying on bat control and pitch recognition. That is why he secured an MVP and a World Series ring in Atlanta. He elevates every single metric across the board.
But here is where the compounding interest analogy truly cements itself. We've been comparing them through age 31.
Correct.
Right? But then, Freddie Freeman turned 32.
Oh, man.
He leaves Atlanta in this highly emotional free agency departure and signs with the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Right.
Now, traditionally, age 32 is when a player's bat speed starts a slow, inevitable decline. The power dips, the strikeout rate ticks up.
Standard aging curve.
Right. But Freeman defied the aging curve completely.
He didn't just defy, he accelerated.
Exactly. In his age 32 season in Los Angeles, he hit .325. He led all of Major League Baseball with 199 hits and 47 doubles.
Insane.
He even stole 13 bases, which set a career high. Like, how does a player fundamentally improve at an age when his physical tools should be degrading?
It comes down to 2 factors, really. Plate discipline and lineup protection.
Okay.
Because Freeman relies on pitch recognition rather than sheer bat speed, his primary weapon actually improves with experience. He simply knows the strike zone better at 32 than he did at 25.
That makes total sense.
And secondly, you put him in a Dodgers lineup surrounded by fellow superstars, and pitchers just can't afford to pitch around him.
They have to come to him.
They have to throw him strikes. And his swing path is designed to perfectly exploit strikes. He led that entire juggernaut Dodgers offense in runs, hits, doubles, and RBI, posting 57 multi-hit games.
It's just inevitable compounding returns. He doesn't go bankrupt in a slump, he just hits another double. And I think it leaves you with a profound question about how you build your own teams or organizations.
Yeah, it applies everywhere.
Right. Do you value the Olsen profile, the explosive, record-breaking talent who delivers massive peaks but carries the volatility of raw power? Or do you invest in the Freeman profile, the foundational presence whose elite mechanics and adaptability make everyone else better, even as circumstances change?
It is the ultimate test of peak performance versus sustained consistency.
It really is.
Yeah.
So let's pull all these threads together. What have we actually uncovered in this deep dive?
Well, we started by looking at a Braves team surviving while their MVP candidate's underlying process, his elite expected slugging, is being masked by a brutal drop in sprint speed and, honestly, bad luck.
Right.
And Michael Harris II is bridging that gap by producing incredibly high-value contact and delivering in clutch, physically compromised moments.
Then we looked at the systemic collapse of the Philadelphia Phillies. Their top-heavy, panic-driven approach contrasts so sharply with an Atlanta team that is just calmly waiting to drop an elite ace like Spencer Strider and a premium catcher like Sean Murphy back into the best pitching staff in baseball.
Yep. And finally, we explored the concept of adaptability. Austin Riley finding value on the base paths when his power vanished, which led us perfectly into the debate between Matt Olson's raw, volatile power and Freddie Freeman's complete, compounding, slump-proof swing mechanics.
Exactly. But before we sign off, I want to leave you listening with one final thought to chew on. Something that builds on what we've discussed, but takes it out of the batter's box and into the human element.
Okay.
We talked extensively about Ronald Acuna Jr.'s dropping sprint speed. We explained the biomechanics of how losing that speed hurts his ability to get infield hits and stretch the defense.
Right, the physical reality of 2 major ACL surgeries.
Right, but consider the psychological weight of that transition. Imagine being an elite performer whose entire professional identity, your swagger, the very thing that made you the most electrifying player on the planet, was built on explosive, terrifying speed.
Yeah.
You were the guy who could steal 73 bases. But now, your own body has forced you to transition into a completely different type of player. You have to become a pure plate discipline and power guy.
That is a profound, fundamental shift in identity.
It is. We can measure the physical toll on a stat sheet. But what happens to the mind of an elite performer when the very tool that gave them their confidence is suddenly just gone?
Right.
How do you reinvent who you are at the highest level of your profession when your body dictates the terms? It's a heavy, incredibly difficult process, and it's one Acuna is trying to navigate in real time, under the brightest lights imaginable.
It requires a level of mental resilience that analytics simply cannot quantify.
It truly does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this conversation encourages you to look past the surface numbers in your own life and work. Sometimes, the initial outcome is a 0. The software glitches at the deadline, and your physical tools change. But if you understand your underlying mechanics and your process remains solid, you might just find yourself leading the pack anyway. Keep analyzing, keep questioning the surface, and we will see you next time.